Finally, I've defeated her, that fake doji. I now stand supreme. What is that?
You were always talking about blowing people's backs out, right? Well, how does it feel, baby girl? Thank you to our final patrons, Strawbones, Aaron, and Black Wolf. Now, before we get into this breakdown / review to chapter 198 of Jujutsu Kaisen, please feel free to leave your own thoughts on the chapter in the comment section down below. Leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, make sure you hit that little notification bell so you miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do have a Patreon down below. You can support for as low as $1 a month, getting like exclusive videos, early content, and more. Now, let's hop into last week's poll. Or should I say, 2 weeks ago's poll. So 2 weeks ago, I asked you all a very simple question. With Naoya slapping out that real hitting us with that domain expansion on our cast of superhumans, what did you guys really think was going to happen? What type of domain would he have? Would he have a sure hit, sure kill, because he's all about that violence? Would he have sure hit, sure rules, because you can't move unless you're going 24 frames? Or would he have no hit, technique buff, aka that amp would go absolutely wild? And with an overwhelming 65% of the vote, sure hit, sure rules took the cake. And notably, it kind of is a mix of 1 and 2, but I definitely is number 2 more. So 65% of y'all were absolutely right. Congratulations. This is now the newest biggest margin that someone has predicted, or a bunch of y'all have predicted what the next chapter was going to do. Great work. I'm happy for y'all, and I'm glad to do it. Number 2, sure hit, sure kill. I definitely get that one, though, mainly because, like, I don't know, Naoya has always been a less than calm and peaceful guy, so I wouldn't have been surprised if he had just opened up with raw violence, because it's Naoya. But finally, no hit, technique buff. Reasonably, the only reason I didn't even think of this one was that much of a viability, but I included it anyway, was just because it's such a new domain expansion. Like, I know the Disaster Curse were apparently just bored with domain expansions. They were just like, haha, boom. But considering Naoya was a human and he never had any whiff of a maximum technique or a domain expansion before, I figured maybe it would be a weaker one and we'd have to start with 120% buff like Megami got with his incomplete domain. But nah, Naoya came about the business with the business. So congratulations to y'all. Thank you to everyone who voted on that poll, and make sure you get your input in on tomorrow's poll, dropping at 12 to make sure your input is included for next week's review. Now, let's hop into chapter 198. What's up, guys? Oliver Pencil here, and here we are to do a breakdown and review of chapter 198 of Jujutsu Kaisen, which is known as, Sakurajima Colony Part 8. Like, I still can't get like, I get it now that I've gone back to the early parts of the series and realized that, oh yeah, Gege never named chapters, but come on, dog. This could have such a fire net. You could literally just name it Time Cell Moon Palace. Like, you don't even have to get too fancy with it. Just call it Time Cell Moon Palace. But regardless of that, this opening page is amazing. Like, admittedly, it is very, very creepy to see Naoya just, like, upper body out of his lower body. Like, he still has all the tentacles just merged into his core. But you can tell by how, like, terrifyingly focused he looks. Like, he has a sick smile on his face. You can see how small and, like, focused his eyes are. He is just on something else right now. It is amazing to see. And I love, Gege, while not being the best artist in Shonen Jump, I'm sorry. Blue Box exists. Horikoshi exists. Not many other, but a couple other manga. Tabata exists. Like, there are other manga with better art quality overall. But, when Gege wants to snap, Gege can snap. Like, look at that eye in the background. That mess is beautiful. I love it. However, let's hop into the chapter itself. So we open up, and we do get to see that, Time Cell Moon Palace is a little freaky deaky, if you ask me. Like, interestingly enough, despite Naoya being all about, manly, we don't like women. For actually, I won't explain what it looks like for the kids out there, but for any of my people who know what it looks like, isn't it kind of funny? And, like, notably enough, I think the unofficial translation name actually works better than the official translation name, because it was called something else, but I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that, so I'm not going to. It was called something else, but it fit more, especially considering the aesthetics of the domain. So Time Cell, I mean, realistically, Time Cell Moon Palace, even like multiple things that seem interesting about this domain, considering it's Naoya's domain. Like, Naoya he's not the biggest fan of women, and he does not think they are that powerful, but Time Cell, well, you know where cells spend a lot of time developing in a moon palace, if you know what I'm saying. The moon is constantly, not necessarily always, but it's usually associated with females, and a palace, not a king, not a actually no, palace is just a palace, so that works out. But still, it's very interesting that his domain takes up this sort of aesthetic as someone who is as unprogressive as Naoya. And what I do love, though, is how both Daido and Miyo are like, whoa, wait a minute. But they are immediately locked onto the gigantic eye that stands behind Naoya, holding up the palace. And it just gives off this ominous, super, like, it reminds me of Gojo, which is interesting, considering that's all Naoya wanted to be. He wanted to be supreme like Gojo, and Toji, obviously. It's the perfectly highly detailed eye that encaptures all that look at it. I think it's amazing to see it just glare at them. And you can see these two masters of their craft, really, are just like, oh no. Interestingly enough, though, to save themselves, neither of them actually don't. Well, I get Daido not domaining. He just happened to be. I still cannot believe Kenjaku actually just went and revived Daido. Like, I doubt he had a contract with Daido. I doubt Daido, with Kashimo, Kenjaku had to have a whole conversation with him. He had to explain everything. He was like, oh yeah, I have this really cool thing planned. It's called the Culling Games. You should really join it. But he even had to offer up Sukuna and everything. Like, he had to give that. Meanwhile, I bet he just went up to Daido's corpse and was like, wow, that's a lot of bodies in your wake. You'd be fun to have, and just took him. Like, I don't think Daido could have even denied any consent to that, or like given any consent to that. But Miyo has a simple domain, or at least not a simple domain. He has a domain expansion of his own. I guess maybe because he and Daido would have to agree to the condition, because obviously Naoya isn't, because he's in his own domain. But like, I'm pretty sure safely sumoing in a barrier within a barrier would be better than dealing with this. And even if, right, like, say you just go into domain tug of war, still, considering you're in this extremely weird place and domain, I feel like it would have been safer to just instantly, got a domain back. But I guess maybe Miyo just can't in this moment, because immediately, the moment they lock place with the eye, it seems to shoot out what looks like film reels. And if you remember, this is, of course, the domain expansion of the 24 frame technique. And these frames, very interestingly, go directly into their necks. Like, Daido seems to be able to react slightly and block it, but Miyo is just completely caught off guard. But it's interesting that it dives straight into their necks. You think it would go, like, into their eyes, especially considering it comes from an eye, assumedly, and the eyes are where you perceive the 24 frames. So the fact that it dives straight for their necks, I don't know. Very interesting. Very interesting. I wonder if there's any sort of meaning behind that. Any of my animation people out there, if you know why it went for their necks and not their eyes, let me know. I'm interested in that. However, we do get to see, as it pierces them, it really digs in deep there. And once again, Naoya, he has his human form back for the most part, like, down to his earrings. Like, it was always just stored within his curse body. But he still, and I think this is, once again, another testament to Gege's art style, still looks monstrous. Like, the way he's holding his hands together in that weird position, and is just smiling. He looks, ironically enough, snakish. Like, it fits his character, because, boy's nothing but a big old snake. But in actuality, it's just very interesting to see him look so oddly, like, I can't even really put words to it. That's how strange he looks. He gives off alien-esque vibes. Like, he's not necessarily natural, which makes sense, because assumedly, considering he's still fused into his lower half, and we've never seen a case of a curse returning back to the sorcerer itself, I think he is meant to be, like, a bit off. And I'm assuming Naoya never had access to this, because there's no way he wouldn't have used it against Maki. Which makes me wonder, like, Was it really the jumping that... I mean, now that I think about it, it actually does make sense. Because usually, people unlock domain expansions, curse or sorcerer, when they're at their quote-unquote lowest. Like, when they're really needing in revelation, needing that burst in power. Like, look at all the previous users of domain expansion. Megami unlocked his when he was on the brink of death. Mahito unlocked his when he was on the brink of destruction. I'm not necessarily sure. I mean, Dagon really, he didn't. I'm not sure if he unlocked it. No, he didn't unlock it. He could always use his, but he activated it on the brink of despair. So Naoya, when pushed to the brink of despair, being able to unlock domain is kind of fitting for him. Interestingly enough, he didn't unlock domain when Maki hit him though. But I'm assuming it's because the damage was like so vital and bad that he couldn't necessarily make hand signs to form a domain. However, what is interesting is that the like button is free and so is the subscribe button. So I really appreciate if you hit both of those. They help out the channel a lot. They help me out a lot. Thank you. But with that, we see Snake Naoya, finish off the job. And seemingly, as you see the frames pierce deeper and deeper into them, they suddenly vanish. And they're sort of just left with these spurts of white coming out of them. And both of them immediately recognize, okay, something was injected into me. Daido holds the left side of his... Wait, is it left? Yeah, his left. He holds the left side of his neck. Meanwhile, Miyo holds the right side of his neck. And both of them instantly realize, like, nothing happened. Interesting. I didn't know I was reading One Piece right now. Cool. And Miyo is like, was that a misfire? Either way, there's nothing else we can do here. I love how both of these two, right? This is much less their like base instincts taking over. Well, actually, it's even more of their base instincts taking over, because both of them aren't thinking, well, time to katana, well, time to sumo. They're both thinking it's do or die time. It's time to attack. I love how in situations, even the most obsessive of men are like, we must survive to live on our dreams. It's nice. It's nice. It really, ironically enough, despite going back to a simpler thing like what person doesn't want to survive, especially in a life or death battle, but in actuality, it's cool to see people who are extremely obsessive with their main things, the main things that they do, love their life still have care enough that they're like, okay, do or die, we have to do this with the best of our ability, we have to attack. It's nice. It adds layer. It's shockingly enough, the more simple you go with a simpler character, in my opinion, the more complex you immediately make them, which is cool. And we do get to see that the moment both of them declare that, well, it's time for the attack, and they lunge in, they immediately burst with the juice of life. And notably, they both are absolutely confused. And it's interesting to see where some of their rips are coming from with what's explained later, because we see a rip comes on Daido's upper eyelid. Not upper eyelid, the right side of his forehead, part of his arm near his wrist, and those seem to be mainly it for him. His whole right arm is just fine. Meanwhile, Miyo seems to come directly, like, beneath his right eye, along his back, and that's also about it. Those are weird places for him to rip based on what is explained about the domain later. And we get to see, as Miyo is... Actually, no, now that I think about it, it looks like both Daido and Miyo are just straight up bleeding out from their eyes. And we see that both are extremely confused. But then, Naoya... It's interesting. Naoya goes on to explain, like, it's your first time seeing this. Anyone I touch has to move like me or they freeze up for 1 second. So, I guess that does make sense. He never necessarily fought them with his basic ability, and he didn't use the air-shattering ability against Daido. And by the time Maki awoke... he was all about trying to get that speed back up, so he never even bothered using it again. So this is their first time seeing it. And I guess Naoya, right now, is taking advantage of the whole Binding Vow, where if you explain your curse technique, it becomes stronger. And he goes on to explain the domain. And this is very interesting. He said, in this domain, it seems the technique's target is even more precise. It can even target individual cells. If you try to move, they might get out of whack. And then that happens. Notably, on the Patreon, you can check out my live reactions for as low as $1 a month. And I did admittedly freak out over this. And I think at its highest potential, they should just fall apart. Like, legitimately just die. Like, notably, he says, it can even. Meaning, he probably isn't doing it 100% of the time, or the domain isn't doing it 100% of the time. But think about it. Every single individual cell of your body. How many cells are in the human body? Give me 1 second. 37.2 trillion cells in the average human body. Daido's a bit girthy, if you ask me. You're telling me that if you're forced to make every last one of your 37.2 trillion cells move in sync in 24 frames a second, dog, you're supposed to be dead immediately. Like, not gonna lie, if this domain acted at a fraction of the efficiency that it would, like legitimately instant death, because fun fact, even if you are standing still, every last one of your cells is still moving. Like, maybe some of them aren't, but no, I have to imagine your neurons are still firing. That requires cell motion. You're still breathing. That requires cell motion. Like, everything requires cell motion. You can't control all 37.2 trillion of them. You can barely control your 4 limbs half the time. So I can't imagine, like, if this domain was running on high frequency at top pace at all times, as it really should, but plot, it would literally be the best sure hit, sure kill domain in the entire series, because no one could counter it. No one could counter it. Even Mahito's domain, arguably the most insane, broken thing ever. It can be countered if you have 2 souls, or have some sort of soul manipulation resistance. You have enough cursed energy, bada bing, bada boom. I don't even think Mahito's domain will allow him to just touch it and bada bing, bada boom. He couldn't instantly transform all of Toto either. Like, legitimately, to be fair, it was a 0.2 second domain, but still. There are limits to Mahito's domain. Infinite Void, pretty darn strong, but it doesn't do anything for you. It'll make your enemy's brain dead, but if your enemy is like extremely durable to the point where you can't take care of them, say they can somehow resist a resistance erasure like Hollow Purple, like let's say Gojo were to use domain expansion on, let's see, who's a very durable character? Let's say Gojo were to use domain expansion on someone like Jiren. Let's say it worked. Let's say Jiren somehow gets overwhelmed and caught in it. Jiren should be so durable just in base that Gojo wouldn't be able to rip his head off. Even if Jiren was standing there brain dead, his base body is still too durable to tear apart. So sure, you would get the win, but you wouldn't necessarily ever be able to just tear apart your enemy. But with this domain, Time Cell Moon Palace, no, you just get to stand there. And at maximum efficiency, every living thing has cells. Unless it's like a robot. And then they all fall apart and die. Legitimately, that is crazy. That domain is snapped. It's just, seemingly enough, and to be fair, it does do a lot more damage. Like, as Naoya is explaining, you get to see both Miyo and Daido are bursting more and more. Like, more and more holes are opening up as they fail to move within the 24 frame time limit. But even so, like, seconds, minutes, hours, days, weeks, years, decades. I'm sorry. Each life, a faded lesser copy of the one before. No, I'm sorry. I don't know why I just went into that. But still, I'm shocked it took that long. Like, the fact that Miyo is still in one piece. Nobody, it looks like he loses his nose here, but I'm not sure if that's just Gege shading. Like, and the weird thing is, no, he does fall sideways. Like, his head lands, like, Miyo thuds against the ground. And it looks so weird, because it looks like his nose is just gone. Like, it fell off. But Daido's still able to stand, notably. So I guess Daido's just... But then again, he has more to lose than Miyo. Like, Daido, he's a girthier man. And we get to see that Naoya's like, I see it just hit the floor, but me, I feel good. And this is a good domain. So I'm doing good. And admittedly, I can tell why he feels good. His back muscles are going crazy right now. Once again, so weird to see he's just fused into his lower half. Like, it's strange. Like, I don't know, if I went from having legs to having numerous tentacles in a cup, I don't know how I'd feel about that. Like, it would just feel so awkward. But I guess now he's cool with it. He says he feels good, so he's down with it. And interestingly enough, Naoya straight up mentions, like, oh, BT dubs. By the way, since, I can't figure it out, where did Maki die? As usual, her presence kind of is, not here. But then again, he immediately realizes that, wait a second. That's Impossible. This is my domain. She's like, Toji, she lacks curse energy, but I should still be able to locate her within my space. Because, it's your innate domain. That's like, but then again, once again, kind of with the whole 37.2 trillion cells argument. Would you really know? Like, until your body sends up mass flaring signals, like your body temperature goes up, you start to feel sick. Would you know if you got a virus? Like, would you be able to feel it? I don't think so. Like, there's so many things. Like, if one of your cells gets sick and then starts to propagate to a whole bunch more, then it would be a problem. But if you had one little whiff, one little taste of something bad in you probably wouldn't be able to tell. So maybe that's another innate weakness of a larger domain. Like, hypothetically, you would have locations of everybody, but if someone were stealthy enough, they could hide. However, fun fact, the like button is free and so is the subscribe button. So I greatly appreciate if you hit both of those because they help the channel out a lot. They help me out a lot. Thank you. But with that, it's interesting that Naoya is shocked to find that he can't sense Maki. Like, I guess it does make sense. Here's the thing. We'll get into it in a little bit. But we get to see that Daido is he's still about the action, essentially. He swings the blade with such force. Like, he's ready to tear into somebody. But I'm not sure if this is the domain or Naoya. But because the arm just comes clean off. Like, Daido's hand is removed after he swings. It's removed not even at his wrist or anything. Like, it's like someone literally took a blade to his forearm and took it off. And I'm confused on whether it's domain or Naoya, because Naoya says, I'm thinking, stop messing around. Which assumes that he did it himself, which, if so, crazy, considering the level of speed. Like, in terms of speed blitzing, the Zenin clan, there's a lot of levels here. So if Naoya did that, wild. But we see two hands reach out from the darkness for a blade that is now free. And what I love here is that we see Daido smile. He just has, as he's falling apart and bleeding, he just has this big old grin on his face. And then we see so Naoya has a blade put right through his back. Notably, I've not been stabbed through, so don't get me wrong here. But very specifically, would it be wild to say that she hit no vital organs? Like, I'm not sure how exactly the body's partitioned, but like, I know your heart is not in the direct center. You could feel it on the lower left part of your ribcage, usually right beneath your chest. And then the lungs are obviously to the side of it. Like, she may have hit his sternum. Like, I bet there's a clean cut through his sternum, but like, that wouldn't necessarily be a kill shot. You would need to go for like the heart, the lungs, the liver, something like that. Like, it's cool. But Maki, come on now. Step your game up. Get your aim better. No, I'm kidding. Obviously, Maki knows what she's doing here. But here's the thing. We get something that I feel a little bit mixed about. We'll talk about this. So the chapter goes on to explain. Like Toji, Maki doesn't have any cursed energy, so barrier techniques treat her as a building. Interesting. But we'll continue from there. Naoya must use an actual structure as the barrier's exterior, like Fushiguro did in Tokyo Colony No. 1. But unless she consents, he can't trap her inside the domain. Now, with that being the case, with that being the stated explanation here, I have a question. Why did Toji get trapped in the domain of that vengeful cursed spirit? Let me see. An imaginary vengeful spirit. I had the chapter open. Go back to chapter 73 of Jujutsu Kaisen, page 9. We see that Toji is in fact trapped within a domain. He doesn't give consent or anything. He doesn't deny it, but he doesn't give consent. He is trapped in the domain, though. But I guess maybe you could argue here that she uses, like, what Toji says here is, an imaginary vengeful spirit, an innate domain with a pact that cannot be broken unless the question is answered. So, he's trapped by a domain here, right? Like, maybe this falls under the structure thing? Like, if he wouldn't be considered by the domain because he doesn't have cursed energy, maybe the worm would be considered? But even then, no, because Maki's holding a cursed tool. That would have cursed energy. That would be able to get picked up on. But she doesn't get picked up at all. But then again, I guess she stabs him too quickly, but we'll give it that. But the fact that Toji is at all limited to this domain makes it seem like this is kind of a retcon, unless you want to argue that it falls under the structure criteria, like the little imaginary vengeful spirit didn't necessarily make a barrier, rather it's just using the building around it like Megami did. However, even if that's the case, the point here that the chapter goes on to point out is that unless he consents, or unless he/she consents, considering this is Toji and Maki here, he can't trap her inside the domain. So why was Toji trapped? Huh? Like, I'm spelling a little bit of a retcon here. Unless there's something that's unbelievably different about this imaginary vengeful spirit's innate domain versus Naoya's. I feel like that's a little bit of nonsense. I get Miyo's. But even that still seems a bit weird. Like, Miyo seems like a domain that would have an immediate contract consensual thing to it. Like, he specifically asks everyone to sumo before he does it. So I get the barrier not going up until someone consents to it. But for this case, it's a domain expansion with sure hit and sure rules. I don't know. I mean, technically, I don't like the explanation. Like, to be fair, it makes sense with what has been built up in a different. I think it's the explanation that gets me. I think it's the whole, but unless she consents, he can't trap her inside the domain. Remove that line, and I think it's fine. Because what happens here is just the similar phenomena that happens with all barriers when it comes to Toji and Maki. They cannot be picked up by barriers because they don't have cursed energy. So I completely understand the barrier not being able to pick them up. Toji explains that's how he got even into Jujutsu High and got to the places and the tombs where Geto and Gojo were going with the Star Plasma Vessel. That makes sense. Maki is introduced as being able to just run through the barriers in and out whenever she wants because she is not detectable by cursed energy. She's really not even a player in the Culling games. That makes sense. But the idea that unless she consents, he can't trap her inside a domain, I mean, I guess, you know what, never mind. I guess it makes sense. And I guess Toji consented to that previous domain, but assuming the main reason she doesn't still get hit by the domain's effects, even though she seemingly is directly in front of the eye, if we're supposed to believe Naoya's placement here, is that we've kind of run into a Bleach problem? Where, remember, I believe it was Aizen, I forget who mentioned it, but someone mentioned in Bleach that, well, actually no, it was Shunsui. I specifically remember it was Captain Kyoraku. He went all out of his way to say, like, yo, you know, we as spiritual beings, fighting against other spiritual beings, we stop being so reliant on our eyes and become overly reliant on our Ryoku, our ability to sense spiritual pressure, to the point where we become over-reliant on it. So what you did see was a clump of my spiritual pressure. But the reason you were so focused on that is because you were following your sensory abilities, not necessarily your senses. That's how I tricked you. And it seems like Maki and Toji are able to take advantage of that, because it seems like all sure hit, sure kill domains are based on cursed energy, which explains why Maki was able to get hit by Daggons, even though she had very low amounts of cursed energy. She still had cursed energy to target. And it seems like all sure hit, sure kills are based on that. So I wonder, could Maki just ignore Infinite Void? I don't know. Idle Transfiguration, can she just ignore that? If it's all based on cursed energy, domains just got exponentially weaker. Like, except for ones that have, like, passive effects. Like, Jogo's is just hot. Like, if you don't have heat resistance and you stand in Jogo's domain, unfortunately you're just getting fried up like Sunday dinner. Like, that's just how it be in Jogo's domain, because it's naturally hot. But in the case of something like Mahito's, something like Jogo's, something like, well, not Jogo's, Gojo's. Why are their names so similar? Someone like Mahito's, someone like Gojo's, someone like, well, obviously Naoya's. Like, these things that rely on cursed energy to sense you, or overload you, I guess, are they just useless? Could they not work? Could Mahito not idle transfigure somebody with his domain if they don't have cursed energy? Because, like, to be fair, we always equalize I always equalize verses just so they have the same energy, so it allows everyone their full range of abilities. But like, I don't know, Maki, the ability to just completely ignore domains that rely purely on curse energy sensing in order to attack, it's kind of crazy. It definitely makes you question the validity of other domains and their validity in other verses. Does this mean that Maki or Toji are immune to something like Sukuna's domain? No, not at all. They would still die because they would just get hit, instead of with cleave, they'd get hit with this mantle, which attacks regular objects. They would just be considered regular objects. So they would still die to Sukuna. If he activates his domain, that's still a GG. But interesting. And to be fair, this does, once again, it makes sense. I just don't like how... I don't like the consent part. Because it just feels weird. I wish Gege just said, unless she is perceived, the sure hit of the domain cannot be activated. And by perceived, literally with sight, not by curse energy sensing, because she obviously has none. With that being the case, it makes everything else make sense, because in that chapter 73, we get to see Toji is looked at by the cursed vengeful spirit. She has a whole bunch of eyes, and she's actually looking at him. So it would make sense how he was quote-unquote trapped in that domain, and it wouldn't contradict this. I'm assuming Gege kind of just forgot. Like, it'd be like that when it'd be like that sometimes when it's such a minor part of the chapter. Like, what? That little part of the vengeful spirit was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, not even, like 4 pages of that one massive arc, the Gojo Pass arc. So maybe he just forgot. I feel like the whole consent thing can't be trapped inside a domain. Kind of wonky. But the idea that through the nullification of barriers, you can't be hit by the sure hit effect of a domain does make sense, because remember what Simple Domain and Hollow Wicker Basket does. They negate the barrier, which ensures the sure hit effect. So if Maki and Toji cannot be consumed by barriers until they can, well, once again, one exception. We'll just call that Gege's mistake. That's a retcon. We'll just call it that. Then it would make sense that they would be entirely immune to the effects of sure hits, because that's what Hollow Wicker Basket and Simple Domains do. So I like it. I think that super fine with that. It does, the phrasing gets me a little bit, because I feel like Gege forgot about chapter 73, but other than that, perfectly fine. I'm not even mad at this. I've been hearing a lot of controversy about it, and I'm mostly indifferent. The other thing that gets me is we cut into, I'm assuming this is Mai and Maki's innate domain. Like, this is where Maki kind of can go to communicate with Mai, even if she's not communicatable anymore. But we get to see that they're holding hands, and Mai straight up says, like, oh, finally, you get it now, right? I even let a sweaty middle-aged guy squeeze me to show you an example. You were able to break it, huh? And it's out of context. Whew. So many ways you can take that statement. But we see that Maki finally realized that the blade that she's wielding is a replica. It's not just like a unique blade. It is one that we've seen before, and it's the one that Toji wielded. Specifically the one that he wielded against Geto's curse that had the hardest skin. And notably, way back when, I just thought that was like, oh, whatever, doesn't necessarily matter. Toji's just that strong, he's just that guy. The hardest skin doesn't mean anything. I didn't think the cursed tool was this crazy. But we find out that the copy of a blade that Mai left is known as the Soul Katana, Split Soul Katana. I prefer, once again, this is another case where I prefer the original fan translation in comparison to the official translation. Like, Soul Liberation Blade sounds way cooler than Split Soul Katana. I hate to say it, come on now. But we see that apparently it can bypass the toughness of many substances to cut the soul. However, exerting that power fully requires eyes that can observe even the souls of inorganic matter. So, once again, ironically enough, bada bing bada boom, another Bleach reference. Because remember what Fullbringers do. They're able to bring the souls out of anything, including inorganic matter. Usually, especially inorganic matter. So it's interesting that Maki's eyes now allow her to perceive the souls of inorganic matter. And I wonder, right? Because in the original translation, it was just like, it can bypass toughness, cut the soul, bada bing, bada boom. But it says it can bypass the toughness of many substances to cut the soul. So I wonder what the the exceptions are. What are the substances that cannot be cut by attacking their soul directly? I'm very intrigued. I feel like Gege is always very they use words for a reason. So they wouldn't go out of their way to say many substances. They would say substances. They would just say bypass the durability. But there's gonna be something that Maki's gonna try to cut that won't work, and it's gonna be trouble for her. I can tell. However, this is crazy. This is crazy on multiple levels, right? And admittedly, I've been plugging everything. To plug the TikTok real quick, I even made a video talking about this, but this chapter seems like Gege is like, okay, I've heard two things in the community that people think you can use against Toji and Maki, the heavenly restricted users: domains and Mahito. I'm just cancel both of those out immediately. Like, I get it. It's just a Duraneg blade in general. She can use it to swing up way higher than her weight class. But still, by cutting the souls, soul split blade, soul split katana, soul liberation blade. Who was the last guy we know that was talking about souls? It was Mahito. And who has a domain that is now rendered useless for the fact that it relies on cursed energy sensing. It was Mahito. So, now, obviously, this carries Maki and Toji up way, way higher in terms of where they can go in simple battles, obviously. And it's crazy how much Toji's being amped well after his death and well after his resurrection. But, I can't knock the hustle. Make them as strong as you want. You need to have them viable somehow. So this is a good way to keep them viable. And we see that it maybe once again is the perception. But then again, no, it isn't. Because Naoya snaps his neck like a snake and is like,
"You fool. You couldn't finish me off in one blow, so you lose because you can no longer move in this domain."
And as he snaps his neck and grows back into Wormia, remember when he had initially showed up as a worm and he had this super long big nose face, he's like,
"No matter how much time passes,
you're still..." Yeah, he gets absolutely sliced in half. So much for not being able to move in this domain. And we see as Maki just stands there, blade held over her shoulder, Naoya's like,
"That's wrong. Why can't I?"
And it is explained the domain's guaranteed hit. Couldn't recognize Maki because she has no cursed energy. Right. Because the guaranteed hit's based on the barrier. I think the reason people are so nettled about this is because Gege didn't explain it well. I'm not gonna lie, out of all of Gege's explanations, that's not how he should have explained it. He should have explained it more similar to Hollow Wicker Basket. The effects of heavenly restriction and no curse energy allow it so that the barrier, which enforces the sure hit technique, forces non-hit. It allows, essentially, by the neutralization of the barrier, which rely on curse energy in order to restrain beings, the lack of curse energy allows total freedom and immunity to the sure hit technique. That's what I think. And it is interesting to see that Maki just stands there before Split Naoya's head. And because Naoya is now dead, the domain bursts. And we see that as the domain bursts, Daido, he's like, "Oh, Galaxy Willikers, we barely made it, Kappa." And I love how Miyo, who's still on the ground, is like, "We're really alive? You could have fooled me." I think it's hilarious. We do get to see that Daido's like, huh? He looks and sees the person he threw the blade to. And we find out, 12 years after his death, a demonic fighter equal to Toji Zenin was fully realized. And this definitely, you could just argue. Yeah, I saw an argument for it, though. That once again Gege released about Maki being as strong as Toji during the Zenin Clan massacre, I guess it was just wrong. I guess he just changed his mind. I don't know. He just didn't have to say it. A lot of us went with that because Gege just said it, but I guess not. Now equal to Toji. If there's any more Toji meat writing after this, I'm going to believe Gege just keeps wanting to upscale Toji, and I feel like it's a little disingenuous at that point. But with this being the end, we see Maki is now ready to roll right now. Ready to roll right now. And assumingly this is the end of this little battle. Unless we get like one more little chapter of wrap-up after this, which I don't think we will. I mean, maybe. Because now he's like dead. Unless we get a little quick discussion about Daido and Miyo and like what they're going to do now, whether they're going to follow Maki or not. I'm not sure where we're going to go. Actually, you know what? We do need to go check up on Kamo. We are going to get at least, like, at the end of the Sendai colony fight, after Yuta won, we didn't just immediately cut away. We had a moment where we got to see Yuta healing everybody. So I'm assuming next chapter we're going to deal with the ramifications of this. Go check up on Kamo. Go see what Miyo and Daido are going to be doing now that their battle is essentially over and they're both extremely wounded. We'll see. And obviously, with this being over, this leads us to the question of, is the setup stage of the Culling Games now over? Are we going to move into the next stage? Or do we have another mini-arc? Notably, I'm fine with another mini-arc. I've been loving the Culling Games for its mini-arc and how it's establishing and expanding on the characters. But I know a lot of people hate it because it's not Shibuya, but whatever. I'm very intrigued to see how this is going to go. However, this chapter, despite that one wonky retcon that feels a little bit strange and the poor explanation, I really, really like it. I like Naoya's domain. I like seeing how it works. I like seeing Naoya's death, unfortunately. And I love getting confirmation that Maki and Toji are still high tiers. I wouldn't call them top tiers or god tiers because they still ain't beating Gojo. But regardless, they're still really, really strong, and I'm happy for that. However, that's what I think. Please tell me what you guys think in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't you like, share, comment, and subscribe. Make sure you hit that little notification bell so you miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do a Patreon down below. You can support for as low as $1 a month. You can get exclusive videos, early content, and more. Thank you so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is Bag of the Pencil, writing off.